could make some money on eBay off of that.
If we go back just quick, I haven't talked to the chief about this, but the radio room
Oh, yes.
process.
I
if we
haven't talked to
wanted
the
put
chief
money-
either, but it's
Yeah.
something I definitely think, and I don't know how many people have had an opportunity to look at the space, but,
I would like to add that back into the budget, 50,000.
is it 50 the total?
That's what they originally had in. Okay.
I'm supportive of that, for
Okay.
sure, yeah.
Any other questions on that?
No, I don't have any objection.
Obviously, we'll work with the police department to,
Take a look at it.
if we can hold.
And I agree totally.
Does that include the interview room and the video? No, just the,
50,000 was originally in there to do some improvements on the front half of the police building. So that would include where the chief's office is, where
Yes.
the radio room is, was to reprogram that. So my guys and chief have met, we have looked at some stuff to kind of start putting some ideas on. We had started that process when we were doing the budget process. So there's still a ways to go, but he was looking to improve that front area. That was with the 50,000. Originally had 10,000 in because the floor, if you go in there, the floor is pretty torn up. They pulled everything out. So he was originally going to do the floor, but we suggested to do the walls, redo and improve his office. His office is dated too, so that was why the 50,000 went in there.
Okay, all right, and we'll put that back in and then
Makes
work with
sense.
the police department on a plan for that. All right, it's about 5:47, so I want to wrap up this portion in case there's any comments or questions from the floor during the regular meeting. I've got a couple extra things, and if anybody else does, we'll address it at that time as well, but just try to keep us on track. Mayor, anything else that we're missing right now?
I think, nothing from our end.
Okay, all right, thank you. All right, anything from the floor? All right, anybody right now? All right, nothing? Okay, well, I'll take the next 3 minutes then and go through the things that I was going to. The previous council, when they discussed the ordinance for the mayor's salary, they set it at 94.5, and which was then obviously approved by the voters. In the budget, just because it was one of the line items for the employees, it bumped up to 96.8. Right, can that be reduced to the 94.5 that they requested? I mean, it's $3,000, but, you know, okay. Yeah, and I know that that was that council's intent, and I'd like to stay with that if nobody has any issues with it.
nope.
Okay. We talked a lot last time about the bathroom trailer and the Jackson Street bathroom, and there was a lot of discussion about that. The Jackson Street bathroom is $300,000 in the budget, and, you know, my thought is, and then the other side of it with the trailer was David was going to talk about plans to use the trailer, not necessarily as a permanent, but to give us some flexibility on the lakefront to obviously dress it up, get it out of the way, do those things, but still provide some facilities that way. The Jackson Street bathroom discussion then kind of came back to the Harbor baseball field, and what are we going to do with the Harbor baseball field? My thought is, we discussed, we need to develop a plan for that. I think at this time, I would recommend that we take that item out of the budget for the Jackson Street bathroom, knowing that Public Works is going to work on a plan for the trailer that would provide those facilities. Thoughts, questions?
I agree with that.
Don't have a problem with
All
that.
right.
Well, does that mean, go ahead.
Yeah, I thought when we were going over capital project, I thought we were moving a portion of that money over to Harbor Field.
Well, there was the bathroom trailer was under, what was it, David? Streets, not streets maintenance, but,
It fell under general government, some of, now that streets are, some of it is, There was policy last year, so it's paid for. Yes.
Right.
Yeah, maintenance now was gonna probably fall underneath.
yeah, the trailer falls under Public Works. The separate bathroom would have been brand new.
Right.
Yeah.
So you're saying to, go ahead.
So we had, I thought it was $400,000 that was in the budget for the Jackson Street bathrooms, and I thought we had talked about reducing that and moving it, zeroing that out and moving it to a Harbor Field line item.
Well, yes, we did.
Yes.
But
Okay.
it was, and you're right, it was Jackson Street to Harbor Field. But my feeling is we should develop a plan for Harbor Field first, and then figure out what we're going, if that's the right place for a bathroom facility and those kind of things.
Right. Well, we should at least, rather than reduce, we could reduce it further, you know, but I feel like we should at least include the cost for design and planning in the budget so that we keep something moving forward with it. Yeah, I don't have a problem, until we know what we're gonna do, reducing that down.
Okay.
Some amount.
That's good.
I don't know what it ought to be yet. Maybe we take a look at that over the next couple of days.
Okay.
But, yeah, I wouldn't be opposed to reducing that budget down to the cost of design and planning for that,
Yeah.
to where we could get a realistic budget amount rather than just budget a full amount.
And you're right, it should be Harbor Field, not Jackson Street, so.
So are you proposing that where would the trailer be? Would it be where the porta potties are now, or?
That was one of the thoughts, and I think that David was gonna come back with a plan for that, before we move forward on anything.
Louisette, were you able to find out whether or not? Okay,
Okay. And then maybe
but
we
would
can.
that be a permanent thing at the lakefront, or just until we got a permanent bathroom at the Harbor Field?
No,
Or-
I thought,
Go ahead, Dr.
I'm
Crowell.
sorry, I thought the plan was talked about that we were gonna put some type of a paddock, a slab there, with the connections, that we can bring the trailer there for an event or whatever, hook it up, and we can remove it at any time. Isn't that what we're talking about? Everything would be flush on the concrete. And so, I mean, it seems to me that's the direction that we should go, since we have this, this portable facility. And this is the type of bathroom, and I don't know if everybody has seen it, but this is the kind of bathrooms they use at Jazz Fest and all, and they are not porta potties. And I want everybody to understand that. This is a very nice, air-conditioned, facility. And if you've gone to Jazz Fest recently, they have those, and they're very nice. And also, too, it's handicapped access, and right? Good, good.
All right, well, we'll come back around to that, but I'm maybe thinking for that process, 100,000, maybe that gets us close.
Yeah, I mean, we're gonna have another budget work
Yep.
session, so, between now and then, maybe
Yep.
I can do a little bit of research and we
Great.
could.
Okay.
Frank, you have anything?
Don't disagree with that number.
I was just saying, because you gotta realize, we have to have money to be able to do the connections.
Right.
So, I mean, if you're stripping all the money out of the capital budget, giving it zero.
No, that's not the thought, because I think when we had talked about it, that money was already under David's side.
That's what I,
You're gonna put it under the maintenance
Yeah.
contract? Because, I mean.
yeah.
Okay, that's fine.
All right. This would strictly just be Harbor Field.
What are we talking about that you're gonna spend from the maintenance contract to do that? About 20,000, okay.
Okay.
All right,
All right, but we'll come back to that.
because we only have $250,000 in it. So, I mean, if you spend 100,000 out of it, that limits
Yeah.
us on some other things.
Yeah, and we might have a little flexibility at the end based off of some other updates and changes if they get made. Okay. All right, let's stop there, take a couple-minute break. Just so everybody knows, from a budget planning process, we are planning to have another budget discussion next Thursday evening at 5 o'clock. As a courtesy to the mayor-elect, we thought that would be appropriate. It is a public meeting, and we'll move forward from there and try to wrap everything up at that time. But that will be next Thursday as well. Okay, so this meeting is adjourned for the moment, and then we will start our regular council meeting in about 6 minutes. Thank you all. If everybody will please take their seats, we're going to begin in just a moment. Oh, you too. Gotcha. Okay. All righty. Everybody good? Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to call this meeting of the Mandeville City Council to order. This is our second meeting as the new city council, and actually our first one together. Our previous one 3 weeks ago was done virtually, and so it's a pleasure for all of us to be here tonight and also to see each of you here. So we really appreciate your participation. We do have a busy agenda, so we'll jump right into it, but if everybody will please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance and a moment of silence. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please be seated. Thank you again and welcome. We completed our fifth budget work session between 5 and 6 o'clock. Excuse me for my cough. I have like a peanut stuck. It's nothing more than that, I promise you. But our first item on the agenda this evening is the approval of our council meeting minutes. 5 meeting minutes to vote on. We can do these just individually in case there are any changes or updates that people might have. So the first item is the adoption of the July 22nd, 2020 budget work session meeting minutes. Do I have a motion? Second? Okay, any questions, discussions on those minutes? Okay. Alrighty. All in favor of approval of the July 22nd, 2020 budget work session minutes, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, and that is approved. Next, adoption of the July 23rd, 2020 budget work session meeting minutes. Motion?
I'll move that they be approved.
Okay, second?
A second.
Okay, any questions, discussions on those minutes? Okay. All right, all in favor of approval of the July 23rd, 2020 meeting minute, budget work session meeting minutes, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Those are approved. Next, adoption of the July 23rd, 2020 regular meeting minutes. Motion? Motion. Second?
Second.
Any questions, discussions on those minutes?
Nope.
Okay, all in favor of approving the July 23rd, 2020 regular meeting minutes, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And those are approved. Next, adoption of the August 4th, 2020 budget work session meeting minutes. Motion?
I move.
Okay, second?
Second.
Okay, any discussion on those minutes? Okay, all in favor of approval of the August 4th, 2020 budget work session meeting minutes, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Those are approved. Next, adoption of the August 5th, 2020 budget work session meeting minutes. Motion?
Motion.
Second?
Second.
All righty. Any questions, discussion on those? Okay, all in favor of approval of the August 5th, 2020 budget work session meeting minutes, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, those are approved. It's been a busy 22 days for this council working with the administration. So we've gotten a lot of cooperation since we started and appreciate everybody's help and support during this time and all the feedback that we've been getting. And we, again, are very, very excited to be sitting with you all tonight. Reports and announcements. We have a couple. Very busy time of year, and hopefully things are only going to get better throughout our community as things loosen up. I would like to introduce Mr. John Gallagher, the Executive Director of Louisiana Municipal Association, for a presentation to the mayor. Mr. Gallagher, thank you for being with us.
Council, again, congratulations on your work and your leadership. We appreciate Mandeville's continued support of the Louisiana Municipal Association. Just want you to know that we're always here to serve you. If you ever need questions, need any technical assistance, our office is available to you at any time. And I'm here. And Richard Williams is our Deputy Director. And
Again, I'm John Gallagher, Executive Director of the LMA, and Mayor Villery, as you know, was their District I Vice President for about 7 years, and traditionally when the mayor retires and moves off our board, we do like to recognize them with a nice plaque. But because of course, COVID, our last meeting was done virtually, so I wanted to present this to him personally, and I do appreciate you giving us this opportunity. But the plaque, if I may, with permission, just read it quickly. As mayor, you rendered outstanding service to the citizens of the city of Mandeville from 2010 through 2020. As District I Vice President of the Louisiana Municipal Association, from 2013 to 2020, you have provided continuous leadership to statewide municipal affairs. Your leadership, friendship, and trusted counsel will be missed by those who have served with you. Thank you, Donald J. Villery, Louisiana Municipal Association Executive Board of Directors, and Louisiana Municipal Association Executive Director. So, Mayor, thank you for all your work. Enjoy working with you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, John. If I can put in a plug for LMA, I mean, yeah, I spent 7 years on the board, and of course, I attended numerous conventions and activities through LMA, and I thought that it was a wonderful experience for me personally, but also a wonderful experience for Mandeville because it helps to educate, you know, council and mayors as far as and police chiefs, you know, together as far as to learn more about city government, find out about what's happening in the state, and especially when the COVID hit. I mean, Frank was on the phone with other CAOs around the state as far as with Zoom meetings, as far as finding out how are you guys handling it, what are you guys doing, and we got a lot of good information from them. They got some good information from us as far as along the way. It's that sharing of information and that camaraderie that you build together and makes you stronger in both areas. So thank you, John, very much. I enjoyed my time. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Gallagher, Mr. Nelson. And I'd also, from the LMA standpoint, the mayor has been very involved and sat on the board with the municipal employees retirement system and municipal police employees retirement system for the last several years, and that's a big responsibility as well. So the LMA is very important, you know, to the state and all of us, elected officials and citizens. This is the mayor's last city council meeting as in his official capacity as mayor, and we certainly want to thank him and congratulate him. In the last 10 years, I believe the mayor has worked with 13 different council members, starting with the 5 that he had, one rollover in his second term, and then us. And so that's 13 different personalities, 13 different agendas, backgrounds, management styles, communication styles, and everything else, and you have worked with every single one of us. So thank you for that very much, Mr. Mayor. 10 years of service at any level in the public capacity is not difficult. Is very difficult. It is sometimes not fun, but it is very, very, very important. And you have been extremely committed and dedicated to your job, to the people that live, work, and play throughout the city. And the city of Mandeville is definitely in a better place today than it was 10 years ago when you took office. So thank you for that, and we look forward to seeing what your next steps are going to be. But we know that you live right down the street from here, and we know that you're going to continue to be very active in all things Mandeville. So the city council has a small presentation that we would like to make for you as well. And I think if we could maybe do a quick picture over by the flag, Mayor, if you don't mind, and then I'll present this to you. Dedication and tireless commitment to improving the quality of life in our community, April 2010 through August 2020. It's always an interesting time when you have transition, and that transition always creates opportunities, certainly for the five of us that are up here, and we are very excited to work with the next mayor. And we have that runoff election on Saturday, and early voting, of course, ended last Saturday. So Election Day, after 8+ months, I believe, is just about, campaign season just about over. And so it's been a long, grinding road for everybody involved. And I do see that Ms. Sika is with us this evening, so thank you, ma'am, for being here, and good luck on Saturday as well. And I don't see the other, Mr. Madden's not here. Okay. All right. Any other reports and announcements from council members? No? One other event on Saturday I'd like to make mention of. It's in support of the Benny Liberto Family Foundation. It is the Badges and Brews, I think is the right title, and it's going to be at the Chafuncta Brewery on Saturday afternoon from 3 p.m. to 7 p.m. It's a drop-by, pick up food and drinks. There is a auction, online auction that you can look up. The Family Foundation is on Facebook pages. There's a website and sponsors that are out there. So please check that out. And if you're running around and can swing by the Chafuncta Brewery off of Highway 59, please do that on Saturday and support that Family Foundation. And they are raising money to give back to other families who will have fallen first responders in the future, to include the state trooper who passed away and was killed a couple of months ago. And the anniversary of Vinny's death is coming up quickly on us, and there will be a lot of remembrances for him. And I know that he is never far from any of our minds, and certainly those over at the police department. So that is on Saturday.
Rick, if I may.
Yes, sir.
We had a situation that happened with one of our employees this past weekend. Katasha Lewis, her son Peter Guy was shot, and he didn't make it to the hospital. He was up in Ruston, Louisiana, and so we're taking up a collection as far as for him as far as for burial costs and that type of thing. So we would appreciate any contributions that people can make. They can either drop off a check at City Hall, they can make a donation to Resource Bank, or they can check our city website. We have a direct link as far as to be able to donate by card.
Great.
So thank you all.
Thank you for that. And it was certainly tragic. And I know a lot of you all know Katasha. If you've never met Katasha, who works at City Hall in the finance department, you need to meet her. She is just an incredible lady. So, all right, let's move in then to old business. First item on the agenda for old business is the adoption of ordinance number 20-10, an ordinance of the City of Mandeville levying and imposing taxes on property subject to taxation in the City of Mandeville, State of Louisiana, for the year 2020 in accordance with the provisions of Article 7, Section 23B and C of the 1974 Louisiana Constitution and revised statutes 47, 1705, B, 1, and 2. Do we have a motion?
Motion?
Second?
Second.
Okay. This is just the property tax millage that we have to set, going forward. Currently, that, and this is a reassessment year for all of our properties. Most of y'all know that. The current millage rate, all in with the three different millage rates that we do have, that total is 9.31%. It is being proposed to reduce that millage rate from 9.31 to 8.86, which would be a revenue neutral situation for us. Same amount of revenue coming in from last year going forward, and we just have to reset that this evening. The administration has been very diligent, in that process, and we appreciate, that feedback for them. Obviously, a lot of uncertainties going forward, so the reset at the lower rate, but at the same revenue is very important. So, anything to add to that, Mr. Oliveri?
No, but if you want to look back to 1980, we were at like 19.
Right. Yep.
So the villages have come down steadily since.
Yeah. Yep. And I think we've talked about this in some of the budget work sessions in the last couple of weeks, that we hope that there's opportunities to reduce that even further going forward. So more to follow on that. Okay. Any other questions from council members on this item? Okay. Anything from the administration in addition? Okay. Anything from the floor? Questions, comments on ordinance number 20-10? Okay, good. All right, Ms. Shear, if you'll please call the roll on this ordinance.
Four.
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 For.
Okay, and that ordinance is approved 5-0. Thank you all very much. Okay, next item on the agenda. Adoption of ordinance number 20-14, an ordinance of the City Council of Mandeville of the City of Mandeville to amend ordinance number 19-17, the operating budget of the City of Mandeville, and for other matters in connection therewith. Have a motion?
Motion.
And a second by Dr. Crowell?
Second.
Okay. This is a budget adjustment amendment that the administration has asked us to take a look at. There's a lot of items on here. The good news is that there's we are still below expenditures, but there was a reduction in revenue and a reduction in expenditures. A lot of the items that are, and there's several line items in here, but there's some cost to COVID-related costs associated, also a reduction in revenue and grants that were projected in the budget due to the outbreak of the virus. And a few things, costs came in higher, mostly of which from the effects of the virus as well. So no additional money needed, just an adjustment to kind of clean up and make the appropriate transfers between the different funds.
That's correct.
Pretty close?
Yes, sir. And the main thing is under state law, if we're going to be 5% off of our revenue, we have to take some type of action.
Yep. And so it is a decrease in revenue of $3.897 million and a decrease in expenditures of $1.797 million. Okay. Anything else I'm missing on that, Mr. Oliver? Okay. Questions from the council in this item? All right. Anything from the floor in regards to? Yes, ma'am. Will you please come forward and give us your name and address? And just so everybody knows, when we did adopt a rule at our first meeting, 3-minute time limit for comments and such, and pertaining to the item that is being discussed.
Thank you. Rebecca Rohr, about 2525 Lakeshore Drive. Perhaps this was a better question for Mr. Oliveri. Since it's an operating budget amendment, why are there two line items for capital outlay, and what are the individual items within those categories, please? Thank you.
Okay.
All right. Why are there two capitals? Because what happens is every department has its own capital account. So if it's the police department versus general government, there's two different capital accounts. So each function of the government is, it has its own capital budget. And if you looked at our capital budget as we go through, you have general government, you have police, you have streets, operations, you have street construction, you have sewer, and you have water. So each one of them has a capital budget. So it's the way that we have to disperse funding because some of it's restricted money. So that's the reason why they're separate. The other question was,
Well, before you leave that, why isn't that an adjustment to capital budget? Why is it?
it is, if you read the top, the top statement on it says that it's flowing through to all of it. So the capital budget is really a memo item that drops to the operating budget. So what happens is the capital budget gives you all the details. The governmental budgets only give you the total dollar amounts. Okay? The main thing that's being reduced in there is money to do with the burn, because it's not going to happen at this time. And I think there was one other item in there. But it's really to, you could have left it in there in the expenditure budget, but the thing about it is it's not going to expend it, and it was related to some of the grants that we were attempting to get. Okay?
Thank you, Mr. Oliveri.
You're welcome.
Any other questions from the floor in regards to this item? Yes, sir, Mr. Runyon.
Glenn Runyon, 408 Venus Drive. So with the reduction in revenue in the budget and the reduction in expenses, Have you got a forecasted actuals for the general fund at the end of the year yet?
It's actually in the budget already, but once we push these adjustments through, that number will be adjusted. So we will be adjusting it, and I think we're still gonna have a healthy balance. But we're not gonna have a $2 million.
Yeah.
You know?
As long as you're not going in the red. I
No,
think you had enough surplus going into this.
Oh, no, we're way away from that number.
Right.
This is mainly because of the requirements of the state law, that we have revenue sources that are not there, but we also have some expenditures. We could have went through the whole budget and reduced it, and probably had a net zero. But, you know, the thing about it is that we have other expenditures, and we have some items that are still going on right now related to COVID.
Right.
And also, we're trying to make sure that we have a second wave, which we hope we don't have, that we're in position to remotely service all of our citizens.
Yeah. I didn't want to leave the impression that this was going to leave us in a deficit position for the year. It's not.
Correct.
Okay.
Good point. Thank you, Mr. Ryan. Anything else from the floor? Ms. Shear, if you'll please call the roll.
Four.
Four.
Four?
For.
Okay, and that ordinance is approved 5-0. Next item, adoption of ordinance number 20-05, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Mandeville approving a conditional use permit for the use designated under Chloro Section 6.4.42.3, lodging/transient, short-term rental, whole house rental located on 723 Molitor, zoned PM1 Marina District, Waterfront A, portion of Square 100, approving the site plan, floor plan, and providing for other matters in connection therewith. Do we have a motion?
Motion?
And a second?
Second.
Okay, Ms. McGuire, do you want to start the discussion on this?
Sure, and I'm probably going to need some help from Louisette. This is a great place. It is actually zoned marina, so I think would be a great place for a short-term rental. Louisette, do you want to expand
Sure, I'll
on
go-
the details?
Sure, I'll go through the planning commission's recommendation. It is a conditional use permit application, so the planning commission or zoning commission makes a recommendation to the council, and then you also make findings. And I'll just run through quickly what they did. So at their meeting, zoning commission at both the work session held on Tuesday, July 14th, and at their meeting on Tuesday, July 28th, they reviewed the criteria that are set forth under Chloro Section 4338, which are the review and evaluation criteria, which establish, this is for the conditional use permit, which establishes 12 criteria to be used in making findings before approving a conditional use permit. And additionally, with the adoption of the short-term rental ordinance, Chloro Section 8235B sets forth standards, which establishes 10 standards, which are also applicable to the short-term rental. So they reviewed all of the criteria set forth in the Chloro for that, and so based on the review and evaluation criteria, the zoning commission found that the proposed use of the whole house rental at 723 Molitor Street and the site development together are in conformance with the objectives of the regulations set forth in the Chloro, and they're in compliance with Chloro Section 8235 standards. And as part of the application, they have to acknowledge and attest to certain things that are included in Article 8, and so you have that as part of your application package where you can see that they've attested to that or they're in compliance with that. And then additionally, there's an administrative short-term rental permit application where if the conditional use permit application is approved prior to getting occupancy, the short-term rental permit application, the administrative side, we will have an inspection done of the premise to make sure that the fire extinguishers and all those kinds of things are in place. We have copies of their insurance package to make sure they meet the requirements. All of those things that are set forth in Article 8. So those will be verified one last time, you know, because sometimes they don't make the expenditure until they know whether or not they've gotten the conditional use permit. So there's one more step after that. But what they could review, the planning commission reviewed, and then further, the use as proposed, this was part of their finding, that the use as proposed will not have an adverse impact on safety or on the character and culture of the neighborhood. The zoning commission unanimously recommended adoption of ordinance 2005 to approve the conditional use permit for the operation of the short-term rental, the whole house at 723 Molitor. And again, this is for a maximum guest occupancy of 6.
and it's a 2-bedroom, 3-bath house. So, the parking requirements were met, all the site development requirements are satisfied, so they recommended unanimously adoption.
Thank you.
I was well, not at the meeting, but I was on the Zoom meeting, and I concur with the findings of the P&Z and recommend them for the conditional use permit.
Yeah, and the responsibility of the council for these items is we can concur with those findings, we can add additional findings, we can question, we can do anything else that we need to do for that. And so your recommendation is to concur with planning and
Yes.
zoning?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Any questions from the council on this item? Anything from the floor? All righty. This is an ordinance, so Ms. Shear, if you'll please call roll on that to approve ordinance number 20-05.
For.
For.
4.
4.
For.
And that ordinance is approved 5-0. Next item, adoption of ordinance number 20-06, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Mandeville approving a conditional use permit for the use designated under Coro Section 6.4.42.3 lodging transient, short-term rental, whole house rental located on 254 Jackson Avenue, Square 74, zoned plan district, approving site plan, floor plan, and providing for other matters in connection therewith. Motion.
Motion?
And a second?
Second.
Okay, Ms. McGuire?
So this is on Jackson. It's actually literally in my backyard, and I believe that it's always kind of been an Airbnb, and I've never had any trouble, never knew that any short-term rental was going on back there. I believe it's by two sisters, well, the one, they each own one, so the other sisters is coming up in a minute, but I believe that I concur that or do you want to talk about this one?
Well, I can
Lisa?
run through the planning commission's recommendation
sure,
on this one
please.
too, just kind of for the record.
Yep.
And again, these three, we had the one you all just approved and the two other ones, and as Ms. McGuire said, these are there's a set of condominiums in Jackson Avenue on the north side of Square 74, which is adjacent to the Harborfield Park, right, or the Harborfield, not the park, Harborfield.
Right.
And so they're nine basically single-family units, and their zone plan district is set up as a condominium regime. And two of those units, this is one, at 254 Jackson. So at the same meetings with the zoning commission on July 14th and on July 28th, again, they reviewed the criteria set forth in the Cloro for conditional use permit and for the short-term rental. And basically also found that the use of the whole house rental and the site development together are in conformance with the objectives of the regulations in the Cloro. Also that the use as proposed will not have an adverse impact on safety or on the character and culture of the neighborhood. The zoning commission unanimously recommended adoption of ordinance 2008 to approve the conditional use permit for the operation of the short-term rental whole house at 254 Jackson Avenue. And this one is also a maximum of six guests with its 2-bedroom, 2-bath. So the parking didn't exceed the standard parking requirement for a single-family dwelling, which is 2 spaces per unit, and they had parking provided underneath the structure. So that's it on this one.
Thoughts on findings? Same, concur with the findings?
Yes, I concur with the findings of the Planning and Zoning Commission.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, I just want to say, I've actually lived on Jackson Avenue for a couple of years. I don't now, but it's been used, these properties have been used as whole house rentals for quite a while. I've never experienced any problems, so, I concur with the findings of planning and zoning as well.
All right, any other questions from the council? All right, anything from the floor? Yes, ma'am.
Yes, Greta Perry, 480 Chase Court East. If you could refresh my memory, didn't we have a number, like a
10.
10.
10?
It's a
Okay,
maximum
so
of
this
10.
is included in the 10?
Yes.
Okay.
These
That's
are the
all.
first three, and I was actually going to bring that up. So there's a cap in the regulations for whole house rental of a maximum of 10 conditional use permits to be allowed to be issued. And so these are actually the first three that have been processed since the adoption of that ordinance. So we've got 1 and 2 pending.
Yep, great. Good question, Ms. Perry, thank you. Anything else from the floor? Okay, Ms. Shear, if you'll please call the roll.
Jason Zuckerman?
For,
Four.
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 For.
Okay, and ordinance number 20-06 is approved. Next item, adoption of ordinance number 20-08, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Mandeville approving a conditional use permit for the use designated under Cloro Section 6.4.42.3, lodging transient short-term rental, whole house rental located on 250 Jackson Avenue, Square 74, Zone Plan District, approving the site plan, floor plan, and providing for other matters in connection therewith. Motion.
motion.
And a second.
Second.
Okay, Ms. McGuire, the third of your bunch.
So this is the sisters, and Louisette, you have anything
Right.
to say, or?
And we'll, both the applicants for these two particular units were very involved in the public hearing process during the development of the short-term rental ordinance, and that was, they acknowledged that they had been operating these for quite some time and have not had any problems. We had some public input at the planning commission meetings with some people that lived on Jackson Avenue, and we're very comfortable with the way it's been operating, and they didn't expect any change in those operations. So again, these three were all held at or had the public hearing through the zoning commission at their July 14th and July 28th meeting. And basically the findings were the same, is that the use as proposed will not have an adverse impact on safety or on the character and culture of the neighborhood. Zoning Commission voted unanimously to recommend adoption of Ordinance 2008 to approve the conditional use permit at 250 Jackson Avenue. And this one is 1 bedroom and 1 bath. It's a maximum of 4 guests.
Any other questions from the council?
No, I just had the same comments as previous, and I concur with planning and zoning's findings.
Okay.
I concur with planning and zoning's findings as well.
Good. Any questions from the floor on this item? Okay, Ms. Shear, if you'll please call the roll.
For,
For.
Four.
Four.
Here. For.
All right, and ordinance number 20-08 is approved 5-0. Next, discussion of ordinance number 20-12, an ordinance to appropriate funds relative to and for adoption of the capital improvement budget for the city of Mandeville for fiscal year 20-21, and to establish the administration of expenditures thereof, and to provide for related matters. Motion.
Motion.
A second?
Second.
Okay, just a discussion item. As we mentioned earlier, we met for an hour prior to this meeting to finish up aspects of the operating budget that we had not gone through yet. So this item on the agenda right now is just on the capital improvement budget. We thought if there was questions from the council or additional items that needed to be discussed, we could do that briefly. And we did also set a date for another budget work session for next Thursday at 5 o'clock right here. We felt it was important to do that as a courtesy to the mayor-elect and move forward from there. So, council members, anything that y'all wanted to discuss about the budget while we had a few minutes, questions that we had for the administration?
No, I'll just make a comment as far as I would make this comment for each of the items we're going to talk about, that is my strong feeling that we should not be adopting a budget, which we are not, prior to the election of the new mayor. I mean, for many reasons, one of which is the new mayor should have input as to the budget that is elected, or that is adopted, and the people of Mandeville are going to elect somebody that they'd like to lead their city, and I think that says a lot. That's very important. So I'm strongly against voting for a budget before additional discussion and before the new mayor takes office.
Yep. A lot of work has been done on the budget over the last 22 days, and although each council member had a chance prior to being elected to work on the budget with the administration, I want to thank the administration for all of that. Every candidate that was running for council and mayor met with members of the administration, mayor, finance director, public works, chief, Louisette, anybody that needed to talk about the budget could. We had an opportunity to do that because obviously once the 5 of us were elected, there was going to be a limited amount of time to really dig into the budget. So we all were able to start doing our homework prior to, which was a big help. So, thank you all for that. A lot of work has been done over the last 22 days since we started this process. The administration, with all the uncertainties that are out there, made a lot of changes even before proposing the most recent budget that we've been working on to include capital. You want to touch on a little bit of that, Mr. Zuckerman?
Yeah, I was just gonna mention, when we started the budget work session prior to this council meeting, you had started with a kind of a brief recap of some of the changes that we've made, over the last couple of work sessions, but from where the budget started back, 45 days ago, 60 days ago, and what was originally proposed, I thought it might be helpful just to touch on the overall reduction that was made, a lot of which was made by the administration prior to actually beginning the formal budget sessions. And I think I don't know what the actual net is now, but in the ballpark of about $6 to $7 million worth of cuts that were made from the initial budget, mostly due to the uncertainty right now, so.
I would agree with mentioning that, and I think credit goes to Mayor Villery and Mr. Oliveri in making those changes. And I think the differential is definitely worth noting.
Yeah.
Good point.
Totally agree.
I would just like to also agree with Rebecca that I don't feel comfortable passing a budget before the mayor is elected, and also before we know what's going to happen with the tax renewal as well.
Yeah, I'd like to comment on that as well. I definitely think that the new mayor ought to have an opportunity to be engaged and to buy into and be responsible for the budget as well. So I think we're all on the same page.
So it's a different year for all of us, without a doubt. Okay, anything else on the capital budget right now from the council? Anything from the floor in regards to our capital budget? Questions, comments? Okay, again, next budget discussion next Thursday at 5 o'clock, public meeting. Please feel free to join us. It will also be streamed live on YouTube, if I'm not mistaken, and we appreciate your feedback and input. Okay. Yes, sir.
Is it YouTube and/or Facebook that's being streamed?
YouTube.
YouTube at this time, when it is a Zoom meeting, it goes on Facebook. If it's a live meeting, it goes out on YouTube.
That's right. It's good clarification. Yes, sir.
Look, search for on YouTube.
Was it?
Mandeville,
Okay.
Louisiana.
Question is, if you were going to tune in via YouTube next week, where would you search? And under YouTube, you would search City of Mandeville, and you'll see our smiling faces pop up. Okay. Yep. Anything else on capital right now? Okay, next discussion item is of ordinance number 20-13, an ordinance to appropriate funds relative to and for adoption of the operating budget for the city of Mandeville for fiscal year 2020 through 2021, and to establish the administration of expenditures thereof, and to provide for related matters. Motion.
Motion?
And a second? Okay, all right. Any questions, comments, updates from the council on the operating budget? Anything that we did not touch on last hour? Mr. Oliveri, anything that we forgot?
No, sir, I think y'all done a great job.
Thank you. Thanks. Comments, questions from the floor? Mr. Runyon?
Glenn Runyon, 408 Venus Drive. I asked to talk to Christine during the break between the workshop and the meeting. So over all these budget workshops, there have been a lot of adjustments made up and down. I was asking where is going to final list of all the adjustments before you even consider a final approval. And I think, Christine, you said you would give us a post a list of all the adjustments?
Yeah, I can post similar to what
Yeah.
Doing, right? I mean, we could post that under miscellaneous agenda items and just put suggested adjustments.
Proposed adjustments.
It's either, now, Frank, one time you used to take any adjustments during the workshops and produce a revised budget. So we had a revised budget when we actually. What happened was, every time you did that, you had to go through the whole budget, look for every account that got affected. And with everything going on, whether going up and down on each meeting, it's not worth it to do that, because what happened one year, and you may have been around when it happened. Yeah. Different people had different versions, so we had people arguing about what was the right number. So this way, you got the same numbers everybody's got right now, and when we get to the point that they accept it, then we go ahead and publish the other.
Yeah, the budget adjustments are immaterial to the total budget. I mean, it's just, it's shoring up the particular line items. and that type of thing. And I think Christine, when she identifies those for everyone, I think it'll be very clear what those are.
So far.
Well, and, coming into it, as Mr. Zuckerman said, I think the capital was about $7.1 million of changes from first budget to when we started. We were looking at a couple other things to reduce and move around a little bit, and very few add-ons. The add-ons, just so everybody knows, I'll kind of tell you all briefly, because I think some of them are very important. The additions to budget items include $55,000 to the cemetery. The city normally budget's about $45,000 a year for general maintenance of the cemetery. We have requested that we put an additional $55,000 in each year going forward to help with the restoration of some of those sites that have been identified. Feel that's very important towards that process. Looking at a comprehensive kind of master usage plan to start that discussion, which would be $125,000. A radio room over at the police department, that'd be about $50,000. That's taking what was the room where the dispatchers were and remodeling, reuse. Going to work with the chief on a plan for that. And $10,000 towards the Lane House. And then we had some reductions, reducing the renovation addition to City Hall, more on the study side, not any project side, from $400,000 to $200,000. Reducing the purchase of a new backhoe for Public Works by $20,000. Was at $140,000 and we took it to $120,000. And then also a reduction of, we're looking at it, we discussed it at our last meeting. We're looking at what was initially the Jackson Street bathroom, which is now really the Harbor Field process area, reducing that possibly by $200,000 down to $100,000 to give us study and design work just as a holding right now. And then minor in the big scheme of life, but reducing the mayor's salary to the set $94,500 that the previous council had agreed upon. Okay. So on the big scheme of that, we are adding money back into the pot. Okay. Yes. Okay. Absolutely.
Rick?
Yes, sir.
What about the $15,000 line item concerning the community
Yeah,
center?
which I think Mr. DeGeneres said we would do under building maintenance.
Okay.
And then identify the plans and needs for this building.
Sounds
And
good.
some of the other stuff that's already being worked on. Okay? Anything else on the on the operating budget? Questions on operating? Okay? All right, again, we'll meet again next Thursday in regards to that at 5 o'clock. Please feel free to join us. Okay, we're moving under new business. First item, adoption of resolution number 20-16, a resolution to support the passage of the renewal of the 1/2 cent sales tax for the city of Mandeville, dedicated towards the maintenance and operations of the infrastructure for the city of Mandeville, which will be voted on by the city of Mandeville residents on August 15th, 2020. Motion.
I move.
Second?
Second.
There's been a lot of discussion about this, and we are asking the voters to support the renewal of the 1/2 cent sales tax that funds our critical infrastructure issues, streets, bridges, drainage, walkways, bikeways, pathways, sidewalks. It's very important. In a good year, it generates about $2.7 million towards infrastructure. It can only be used for that infrastructure. It's a 10-year renewal. So if approved on Saturday, it would be renewed at its current rate for the next 10 years, pending any additional tax reform that the council and administration would work on going forward. So very important for us. If you've not seen it yet, collectively as a unified council, we are out to the public asking for your support for this item. Have done a social media campaign, radio ads, all of which has been paid for out of either our campaign funds or personal money. No taxpayer money was used for those expenses, and we wanted to do this resolution tonight. We've been working with the administration on this. We all know that there's a lot of uncertainty in the air. We don't know what, I guess literally and figuratively, and we don't know what our revenue is going to look like. We know it will be less, but there are 12,500 people that live in the city limits of Mandeville, but we are supporting a community of over 60,000 people that travel on our streets, use our drainage, use our infrastructure on a daily basis. We all participate in those costs, and those costs are tremendous. We want to protect those resources, and we believe that if renewed, it would allow the council and administration to work together to develop the appropriate plans for the right financial decisions for the critical infrastructure needs that we have, to include drainage and flood protection. We've all talked about it. We need to move forward with some plans. Anything that we do from a solution standpoint is going to cost a lot of money, but it is very, very critical to this area that we make steps forward on drainage and flood protection. Some of this money would be able to go towards that. So that is where we are right now on the sales tax renewal. Please vote. There's only 2 items on the ballot on Saturday, if you've not already voted yet. Mayor and the renewal of the sales tax. This is not a new sales tax, a renewal of. So that is my soapbox. Anything else from council members in regards to
I'm going to add
this?
a little bit. It's a difficult issue, and I've spent a lot of time studying and listening. No one wants to pay taxes. I certainly don't want to pay taxes. I need to mention that there are a number of people in my district that are opposed to this, and I want to mention that and express that there are good reasons to be opposed to it. I personally ended up on the side of supporting, and I think it's important. I think we each reached an individual decision and collectively as a group decided to support it. There's a lot of discussion out there that goes on about the excess. We have $30 million, and that's not true, and I think we've discussed that at length at several meetings. My concern started when we spoke to Frank, and this is a dedicated fund, and I think Councilman Danielson has explained that this is not just Mandeville residents that are paying this half-cent sales tax. It's anybody that's coming into our city and using our streets, utilizing our drainage, and I think that's important that people that are benefiting from our city pay a little bit for it. I have concerns that if this tax doesn't continue, that we're going to start draining the general fund. And it seems big right now, but I think at one point there was a meeting that Frank said it could be lowered to, and correct me if I'm wrong, around $7 million. And I don't feel comfortable with less than $7 million in the general fund.
Well, that said, when based on what our current future liabilities are, whether it's for retirement, whether it's for payback, or any of the other items, the required 20% of revenue, you know, the things that the government is placed on, and the thing about it is that until the city, you know, right now, we report 2 different ways in our financial statements. We have governmental, which shows that we have plenty of money, and then if you look at what we do when we file under the VAPR, which is the report that we have to file with the auditors, that one shows a whole different balance sheet than you will looking at fund balances. And that's where it becomes very confusing to people that don't understand the 2 different methods of accounting. So when you take and you deduct the $13 million that we owe for future liabilities, just for retirement, and then the other additional $4 million that we owe for additional other pension benefits, medical insurance and that. Some of the things that the previous council has done is that we established a vesting schedule for new employees, because that's one of the things is to reduce that future liability on our OPEB. Retirement, you can't. Retirement is what it is because it's a state-run program.
And I recognize and respect the arguments on the other side. I think all of us have spent a lot of time listening and studying, and I'd like to see our attention focus upon reduction of millage, property taxes, things that benefit us and the city, and that's my position.
Yeah, I'd just like to add to that, and I agree with everything you said. I've also been on the receiving end of some opposition to it. I don't like taxes. I can't think of any time in the past where I've ever voted for a tax, personally. But, you know, once you start to understand this budget and you understand, you know, what Councilwoman Bush was saying and Rick was saying, that we're a city of 12,500, but what this tax is paying for is servicing about 60,000 people that are using these roads. And if the tax goes away, then those costs come from the general fund, and they come from millages, and then that burden is being borne by the residents of Mandeville solely. So, you know, once you get in and you understand the details of it, It certainly changed my mind as I've gotten into the budget, I understood the nature of the dedicated and restricted funds and where the revenue is coming from and what it's being spent on. I'm in very much the same boat as Rebecca's.
Yeah, thank you.
And I concur with the other members of the council. The majority of this tax is being paid by people who come through our city and use our roads, use our facilities. And they are causing the deterioration because we're talking 50 to 60,000 people come through. And we're talking also the population of Mandeville, 12,500. So the majority of this is being paid by them. I do understand that there's some resistance. I really do, because when you put that three-letter word up there, people back off, and they do not want to pay any of that. But this tax, we strongly feel, is needed, and it's needed to be renewed and extended for the 10-year period. And we have looked at the budget. If you take a look at the budget when it was first presented to us and what it's presented now, we have made significant cuts and significant line items have been removed. Both the administration, both all of the heads of the departments, and we as the council. And also, with your input too. We're getting input from everybody, and we appreciate it. But I think this tax, this renewal, is extremely important, and that's why we made a stand as the council. And I just urge everybody to go out and vote, and hopefully get this tax renewed. Thank you.
Anything else?
I agree. I would also just like to add that it was the recommendation by the Financial Oversight Committee, and I believe that the reason why they recommended that is to hopefully be able to lower the property taxes of the citizens of Mandeville. As everyone said, nobody likes taxes. This is important for our drainage, our bike paths, our roads. That is something that we all want to maintain and keep up. So I'm for it.
There's a couple little things I'd just like to add. Key word this whole process is renewal. 10 years ago, the voters of Mandeville determined that this was important enough to approve then. Those projects, those issues, this infrastructure hasn't gone away. It's only become more costly to maintain, and we feel that this renewal is just as important today as the voters thought that it was 10 years ago. We also look through this process, revenue versus expenses, and we obviously are very financially stable in the city, but our revenue sources are relatively flat. A little bit of an increase here and there. You're not going to see an increase this year, obviously, for all the reasons that we know about, but overall revenue is relatively flat, but expenses continue to go up. At some point, those two lines are going to intersect with each other, and then you're going to have some major decisions to make on whether you cut services, raise taxes, shut things down, or do whatever it might be. We never want to get to that point. We want to be able to use the resources that the voters have given us to make the best financial decisions to address our most critical issues. So that's where we are with this, and I will open it up to the floor if there's any comments or questions. Mr. Runyon?
Running 408 Venus Drive. I wish y'all hadn't put this on the resolution, because that means I didn't have to come up here. I'm totally against this, and for lots of reasons, but the misunderstanding that could be in play here is, first of all, if this $2.7 million goes away for streets and drainage, there are two other dedicated funds that allow you to use for streets and drainage, both the Special Sales Tax Fund and the Third District Fund.
Right.
And the capital budgeting guidelines that Frank put together himself that you pull from restricted funds before you ever pull from general fund. So the idea that this would ever come from general fund is a mistake. That's a misunderstanding. You would never come from general fund until you depleted all of the other restricted funds. And those have $30 million of total balances if you include what's already sitting there in the street fund. So that's misunderstanding if you think that if this doesn't get passed, as soon as you deplete that street fund, then you're going to pull from the general fund. That's not true. First. Second, we've been collecting excess revenue in both the general fund and after we took a dip in the restricted funds. If some of you may or may not remember, and I'll hold my 3 minutes and I'll say, we actually, in 2014, rededicated half of the special sales tax fund. It was 1%. We went 0.5% stayed in the special sales tax, 0.5% went in the general fund.
Right.
From that year forward, 2014 forward, the general fund has been growing $2 million a year. That's about, you can chalk it up to that being a coincidence. I don't think it's a coincidence at all. We moved money from one pot, we put it in the other pot started growing. The special fund and the other funds for 2 years went down. 2017, 2018, and then 2019, guess what? The restricted fund balances have gone up again. So we are collecting more revenue in both the general fund and the restricted funds than we're spending. And expenditures that are going up are only going up on the operating side. That comes out of the general fund. These restricted funds, except for reimbursement for some public works, none of that money out of the restricted fund goes into any of the operating areas at all. So I don't know if y'all all knew all that. Maybe you did, maybe you didn't. But I hope the sales tax gets defeated. You can always come back and look at that again if it's run out of money. There's other things y'all can do in budget-wise that could happen very easily. You're already talking about having employees make a bigger contribution on their retirement. I mean, we had that at one time. The mayor brought actually new employees for a while, started picking up 7% of their retirement. And then we had that got blown away because we made an adjustment that made it had to balance it off. So at one point, there was the employees, new employees, not old employees, it was grandfathered in. New employees started paying 7% of their retirement. Y'all can, redo that. That could happen again.
Yeah.
So there are things you can do about reducing those revenue or expense side if you think that's an issue. But this is restricted money only going for infrastructure, and I think that's been some misunderstanding.
I would love Frank, Mr. Oliveri to address some of that. Those were essentially the questions that I wrestled with as well, as far if we're going to do that.
I would just touch on one item, before the mayor speaks, and one of them being the sales tax District 3 money. That's not a guarantee. That's an agreement between the city and the parish. Most municipalities have the same type of agreement, and that comes up for renewal every so many years. And depending on where the parish stands in their finances and revenue, that could be changed. It could go away. So you have to basically justify the funds and make sure with the parish that those funds that you are receiving, which are sales tax funds, within the boundaries of Sales Tax District 3, even if it's outside the boundaries of the city limits of Mandeville, can only be used for streets, bridges, and drainage within the boundaries of the Sales Tax District. If, for whatever reason, the parish determines that we're not going to get it anymore, you could potentially lose that revenue as well. That's normally about $1.6, $1.7 million a year in a good year. So, for me, protecting the revenue sources that we have is very important. To give us the tools, give us the opportunity to make the best financial decisions, to work with the administration. A lot of streets projects take a lot of time. They're high dollar items that just don't happen overnight. It's probably easier to rebuild a lift station than it is to redo a major streets project or a drainage project, or a flood protection project. So I do appreciate your arguments, though, Mr. Runyon, and totally understand where you're coming from. I'm just trying to protect you, obviously, as a council, where we are. Yeah, Paul?
Paul Harrison. I just thought I'd make a few comments. They're going to be very brief. Of course, I own an office on Girard Street, but I actually live about 2 miles from Mandeville downtown. I live off Lonesome Road, Deerfield subdivision. And so I'm one of the St. Tammany Parish residents that pays this small amount. Practically speaking, everyone in Beauchene, everyone in Greenleaves, everyone off of Lonesome Road pays towards this half-cent sales tax. I'm happy to do it because I use these streets. I bike on the trace, and it's such a small amount. I am like many financial conservatives that I really don't like taxes either. But this tax is getting lumped into the category of taxes. This is an incredibly small tax. I'd love to cut taxes nationally and locally, but this one, and Frank, correct me if my math is incorrect, for every $10,000 spent in sales tax spending in the city, it's $50. So like, if you're going to cut a tax, make a difference to the citizens. But this one is also dedicated. When I pay my taxes, I want to know exactly where it's going. And when I can drive on better roads and I can ride on better bike paths, I'm completely in favor of it. And if I were in the city, I'd vote for it, but I'm not. So it won't even matter what I'm saying today, but I'm giving you a perspective of someone who doesn't live in Slidell or Covington. This idea that, no one comes to Mandeville to shop. We certainly do, but we happen to have postal zip codes of like 70448, but we're outside the city limits.
Yep.
I'm one of the
Right.
60 or 70,000.
Yeah.
So just thought I would add that because I hadn't heard the math yet on the numbers. And I think it is a knee-jerk reaction, like more tax is bad, right? But this one is very small, but it makes a very large difference.
So,
So,
thank you, Mr. Harrison. Absolutely.
Thank you, Paul.
Yeah. Mayor, anything else that you needed to add to that? Okay. All right, any other questions, comments? Yes, ma'am.
Rebecca Rohr, about 2525 Lakeshore Drive. I would just like to commend the council. Y'all have been totally unique in this video presentation effort to get the word out. Of course, we have social media and YouTube and things that didn't exist before, but that was just absolutely over the top, and the fact that you pooled campaign funds to do it is nothing short of amazing. This is the epitome of putting your money where your mouth is. So I want to thank you for that, and I would also like to hope for you that on this council, that this isn't the only major issue where you're 5-0. Put this day on your calendar. We hope we see it again, but we just don't know. But thank you. The ad was spectacular.
Thank you very much. Thanks.
Appreciate it.
Great.
Let me add one thing, and I was hoping Mr. Oliveri could clarify. The big question that I was struggling with was, I'm going to call the general fund the corpus, the ability to get to the corpus. Can you
Well, the general
help me?
fund is, would you say, is the general spending of everything the city could do. Anything that's legally that we can execute and do, whether it's to help with the Lang House, if it's to put a road down, we can spend the dollars any way we want, okay? What happens with restricted funds, as Mr. Runyon was saying, is we have a legal obligation to only spend those dollars for those purposes. That's what the people that passed that tax says. You can spend it on a bridge. You can, just like we did Galvez Street a year and a half ago, we spent over $1 million, I believe, on it. You know, these projects are not cheap, as you were saying. One thing, I don't think Mr. Runyon has had I hadn't seen him at any of the budget hearings, but we talked about strategic planning and looking at the future revenues. And that somewhere in the future, there may be an establishment that says, we don't need to collect this. We talked about I think you talked about rolling it back to 8.75. So, and I think that was a good move, but I think you got to have a good strategic plan in place. You have to have a good infrastructure plan in place. And as you move forward, look at how you're managing your expenses.
one of the things is that, yeah, our general fund has increased, but we were hamstringed on a lot of projects that we couldn't go forward with because we had to have grant money. So we could have very easily spent $3 or $6 million over the last couple of years, but either City Hall was denied, or that the berm was we had to get 50% funded from a grant, which we tried, and I know the mayor spent many, many hours on the phone with the coastal restoration system and everything else. So, it wasn't a question that we wanted to spend the monies wisely, which we thought was going to be a benefit, and give the citizens quality services. I mean, I know Ms. Roybotham, I wanted to thank her when she talked about City Hall. Our City Hall is aged, and it needs to be modernized. And the thing about it is we want to go forward with technology. There's some things, I know Mr. Zuckerman asked me to look into some things, like citizen self-service. Actually, that's for you, Ms. Robotham, for ACH to put.
Yeah.
But, so we're looking into these, and we're trying to spend those monies, because every time we add something, it's not a one-time cost, whereas most of the infrastructure, it's a one-time cost. Hopefully, we don't have to revisit it for 20 years, but if you don't start looking at what the replacement cost and how often you have to replace it, where's Mr. DeGeneres, he left? Yeah, I mean, how much does it cost for a mile of roads? Huh? Yeah, I want a number. Oh. Let me put it like this, it's not cheap.
Right.
And it depends on
Yeah.
what the condition of the
Yeah.
road. And I mean, we always getting complaints on like the service roads. We don't own all of the service roads. So if you ever look, you'll see roads that are in good shape, that's usually ours. The roads that are in bad shape, that's usually the parishes or it's the state's.
Yeah.
So we try to keep our roads up to date and also our drainage system. And I know that we have a lot of other items that we'd like to address. I'm sorry to take
Thanks,
long.
Mr.
Can
Strawberry.
I ask you one question? And I guess what I'm getting, I mean, that Mr. Runyon is technically correct that you would have to get through those other two to hit the general fund. Is that fair?
District 3 only limits you to certain things.
Okay.
So not every road in the city can use District 3 money.
Okay.
You have to be very careful, because if we use money on a side street, it has no benefits to District 3 people. We're in violation of what our agreement is with the parish.
And it doesn't change my opinion, because I think what Mr. Harrison brought out is very important.
Right.
That 60,000 people contributing is,
And granted, whenever we have the ability to use District 3 money, we use it first. But we have $1.6 million agreement sitting out there for bypass roads. So that money, when that construction project starts, we're going to drain $1.6 million out of the District 3 money pretty quick. So, and then we have other projects that we've gone through. And sometimes we have future road projects that are sitting out there that if Highway 22 exit, that could be a major project. If the state won't come up with the money and the parish won't come up with the money and the citizens want it, we may ask I would say the next mayor may ask the council to spend that money. And you're talking about several $1 million to do that.
Yep.
Are you talking about, just on the drainage, to correct the drainage for Highway 22 as far as to bring it down to Bayou Chinchuba? All right, that's a $6 million project. That's $6 million. Now, we hope to get I hope that Mandeville can get some help from the state or federal government as far as, with these watershed areas. But if they can't, it's still a $6 million problem,
That was a good point.
just right there.
Yeah. Really kind of felt this was an important discussion tonight, if nothing else, than to be able to educate, those of us that have joined us tonight and anybody that might be watching. It is very important. Mr. Oliveri mentioned the sales tax rate, and I'll just try to touch on that real briefly. To me, there's a short-term process in this and then a longer-term process. The short-term process is we want to see the sales tax renewed so we can start working on some of these critical issues. The longer-term process is, can we get the sales tax reduced and in line with the rest of St. Tammany Parish? We pay all in, state and city, 9.2%. Every other municipality in St. Tammany Parish, except for Sun, is at 8.7. So that creates, we're paying more. Maybe somebody goes and spends their money elsewhere.
Maybe they take their business elsewhere, whatever it might be. It also creates an accounting issue for the tax collector, for both sides, the whole bit. So there's a lot of things to look at that if we can eventually reduce from 9.2 to 8.7, that's a big savings and it levels the playing field for everybody involved. So that would be a big process. And then as Ms. Bush said, the opportunity to further reduce the property tax down the road would be great for everybody that owns property, residential or business within the city limits. So lots to consider. We really appreciate your time, with this discussion. Anything else, any other comments in regards to this item? Okay, we don't have to call roll on this since it is a resolution. I would like to ask all in favor of adoption and approval of resolution number 20-16, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, resolution number 20-16 is approved. Please vote, and we're asking for your support to vote yes for the sales tax renewal. Next item, adoption of resolution number 20-17, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Mandeville adopting policies and procedures for council appointments to municipal or district boards and commissions and providing for other matters in connection therewith. Motion.
Motion.
And second? Second. Okay, at our first council meeting, a couple weeks, 3 weeks ago, we started the discussion about the appointment process for planning and zoning, other boards and commissions that the city council appoints to. I think we've all had a chance to do some homework on this. There are certainly some questions, from members in the audience, and we want to get to all of those. But what we were really looking for is kind of really a fair and equitable process for anybody that might be applying for any of these appointments, most of which are voluntary and at no cost whatsoever, no revenue, no pay to the appointee, with the exception of planning and zoning, which provides a little bit of a stipend, towards your meeting attendance. So a lot to consider here. Different councils in the past have done it many, many different ways. We're just looking for something that might be a little bit easier, a little bit more fair, consistent, and something that we can, work on, with everybody.
Before we get into the details, I wanted to maybe bring out a few things that have happened this week. We had a resignation of our planning chairman, and I want to ask Ms. Scott, what's the state? Are we in a critical situation since now we have 4 members? Do you see that we need to speed this process up, or how do you feel about that?
Well, we have one up for reappointment and 2 vacancies.
Okay.
Announcement.
Okay. I just was, I don't know if there are any big cases coming up, but 4 people out of 7 is,
August we're okay, September we don't know yet, but
Okay.
we could potentially have some more complexities on the agenda in September.
I don't want us to rush the process. This was a development that came up this week, and I think it's worth noting.
We have 5 members that are going to be present this next meeting.
I actually will
Planning and zoning.
be,
Planning and zoning.
we have
Right.
4.
Well, probably only 4 because,
Okay,
one of them, resigned, and unless
okay,
the sale of his house is postponed, he won't be there.
okay.
Yeah, the situation to put you in
It'll be fine,
is that,
because it's
No, it'll be
right up
fine.
for reappointment, right.
Yeah,
you have to have 4
So we
votes.
still have 5.
right.
But you have to have 4 votes to do it. It's not just the majority of those who show up, it's a majority of the commission.
Yep.
So you have to have 4 votes. So if you get down to 4 members, you've got to be unanimous.
So it'll still be 5.
It'll be fine.
Yeah.
Okay.
And what's
Or
really,
even 5 members, you still have, you
right.
still have to have 4 votes. So.
what's really nice is that, as of today, we have non-applicants have put in their names and resumes to Christine and the council for evaluation, which is, I really applaud that because, we want to get input. We want to get people interested in serving on these committees and boards and everything.
Just to bring everybody up to speed, from a planning and zoning perspective, it's overlapping terms for all 7 members. So one of those appointments comes up every year in August. So that appointment is on the, on the table, I guess. Ms. Bush, when she was obviously elected to the council, resigned from her position on planning and zoning. So that's the second spot that's vacant.
And then the third spot, is Ms. Scott mentioned, another member, based off of a family move, is resigning from P and Z. So we have 3 appointments, and we closed resume submissions today. So we have 9 applicants for 3 appointments. We just want to make sure that we do it right. So the first step in that process that we all agreed upon was, applicants would submit resumes. We've done that. We thought that that was the first step. The next step in the process is we want to look at qualifications. There is no mandatory requirement that you should have a certain member or a certain amount of members from each district of the city, but representation from all sides of the city in all 3 districts we felt was pretty important to give us some balance. There was some question on, well, if one district has the majority of the cases coming in front of P and Z, shouldn't it be weighted more towards that district? And, although, it's 7 members and kind of the way it works out, it typically seems to be relatively balanced between each of the districts and where it should be. So we were kind of talking last time a couple of different ways. Should we have kind of a coordinator? So for 4 open positions. So for example, Ms. Bush, living in District 1, would be the coordinator for that appointment to fill that vacancy. It doesn't mean that a District 1 applicant would fill it, but she would start the process, bring things back to the council as a whole, and eventually with a nomination and then possible appointment from there. So we kind of left it, with that part of the discussion last time, and with, again, the focus being on qualifications, on where we are. So I just kind of want to open it up to the council on thoughts.
Go ahead.
What I wanted to mention is, although Rebecca would spearhead the first one, she can call at any time, or I can call her and talk about these, because we're trying to get the best qualified person in the position. That's it, and it shouldn't be political. It really shouldn't. It should be based on resumes and experience, and, so at any time, the council is providing information all the time to each other by phone or whatever, and then, when that name is brought to the council for a vote, then the vote's going to be taken.
There is one issue. I mean, my term is only for 4.5 years, and so I guess one question I want, are we going to have applicants declared? Are you wanting to serve 7, or do we have somebody out there who wants to only serve the smaller term? It's just something to consider. And I think the second thing I was going to say is I don't think it was just me that was the selection committee. I think we were going to have 2 of us.
There was some discussion there. We've got to look, and maybe Mr. Harrison can help us with this as well, with committee rules, open meetings laws, things like that. So just something that we've got to be mindful of, and that's why I was kind of thinking if you have a coordinator, an individual kind of coordinating, the discussion, we all, like Dr. Crowler said, we all get the resumes, we all have a chance to call each of those applicants. It would somebody that just kind of is leading the charge, if you will.
And we're doing all 3 at the same time.
If possible, yep. Yep.
So there was a lot of discussion about this, and we kicked around a lot of ideas in our first council meeting, everything from scorecards to, gosh, there were a number of items that came up. And in general, I'm in agreement with the sort of simplified process that is outlined in the exhibit to the resolution. I do have a question about the wording in number 5, the 5th step in the process. Just because, I'm going to read it real quick. Following the receipt of resumes, one at-large council member and the council member from the district whose position is vacant will review the applicant's resume. I'm just a little confused with that language because we don't have commissioners by district. We may have a commissioner that's from a district, but we don't have a District 1 P&Z commissioner. We don't have a District 2. And right now, the current makeup, as I understand it, before any resignations happened, we had two commissioners from District 1, 1 from District 2, and 4 from District 3. So I'm just trying to work through the logistics of that. Is the idea for for the district councilman from whatever district the commissioner that's resigning or leaving office because their term has ended. In other words, is that the intent of it? Is that we're looking at where they're from?
I don't think
Do you
so.
understand
I
what
think
I'm-
it's the most qualified person
Right.
above all. And that actually raises another question. I mean, if we're doing 3 of 1, we have 3 coordinators, so I'm not really sure if that makes.
I agree with you, it should be the most qualified person,
Yeah.
but I was more concerned about, is this the right, is this, do we need to work on this wording a little bit on number 5, because it doesn't suggest that you have to replace the commissioner with somebody.
Right.
But it sort of implies that, by saying that the council member from the district whose position is vacant, well, that implies that there is
I
a
agree.
district assigned to that commissioner.
Right.
Which there really isn't. So I agree with the intent of it, I just think we might need to work on that
I
wording.
agree. I mean, this is not political, and it shouldn't be, it should be
Right.
completely transparent. I've heard that comment from a number of people in District 1.
This is
And
a
I'm-
rare,
I'm not hung up on having to have an even spread. It ought to be the most qualified candidates. I think we ought to make an attempt to have every district representative. I think that should be a consideration. Again, agree with the concept of it, just concerned about that wording might be a little bit off, that we might need to revisit.
The concern being that somebody would
Might interpret this as,
favor somebody.
yeah, it's
Yeah,
going
I
to
agree.
that district.
that's all.
So, it's rare that we've got 3 openings, so we're,
Very.
you know, what if instead of saying that district rep was the coordinator, an at-large council member was the coordinator?
That's fine with me. I mean, I think that
Yeah.
any of us could,
Doesn't matter.
So are you saying that the at-large would always be the coordinator, or just,
Kind of yes, I would. So then it takes the district reps out of the, well, it's definitely going to go to District 2 because, Dr. Kreller's in charge. If you have the same person, kind of the coordinating that process, which normally would only happen once a year, it would be a little bit easier, I think.
the reason I'm comfortable with that is I think all of us recognize what we're looking for, and I don't think that the at-large member is not going to listen to the importance of, we need representation in District 2 or District 1. I think that the at-large member is going to take that into account.
Yeah.
I don't see that not happening.
Well, and again, every member has an opportunity to call every applicant, interview, discuss, meet with, it's all open. Just trying to, from a simplification standpoint.
I agree with that. I think you're right. We should make it simple, and I have no problem with the councilman at large spearheading this, and you all can rotate it or whatever. It doesn't really make a difference, okay? Because that councilman at large is gonna pick the phone up and talk to the members here.
Yeah.
And so everybody is gonna participate.
It may be as simple as just changing the wording for that first sentence, just so we can get this behind. It may be as simple as, instead of from the district whose position is vacant, because that implies a connection between the position and the district, which doesn't exist. It might, because you want to have 2 council members doing the interview and all that, we might just be able to say, and the council member from the district whose position is being vacated. Because you have to have a method of selecting a second council member. I mean, say somebody resigns from, or their term is over, okay, you're gonna have 1 council at large. How do you determine who that second council member is? I don't have any problem with it being,
Or do you just say, if you're going to do it with 2, do you just rotate 1, 2, 3, 1?
you could do that. You could do that. My only hang-up with it is just that wording just implies that there's a connection between the position and that seat.
Yeah.
That district.
Yeah.
So, that's
Yeah,
all.
it's a good thought. Okay, we'll come back to that. Okay. Mr. Burger, we'll take some comments, questions from the floor. So let's start, Mr. Burger.
Ernest Burger, 241 Wilkinson Street. What you all may want to consider is looking at the big picture of what you're trying to accomplish here. because it's not just one city, it's a bunch of communities. And I think, as we all know, most of the communities in District 1 and District 2 have HOAs that really prohibit things like, you're not going to get someone trying to build a mother-in-law house in the back of a Fontainebleau subdivision. It's not going to happen. You're not going to get somebody in the sanctuary saying, I want to combine these two lots and stuff and maybe make a, fourplex. It's not going to, it all happens in District 3. And that's the one area that doesn't have the protection. And so what you may want to consider as a longer-term goal is maybe how to revamp the whole Planning and Zoning Commission, not just right now, but maybe next year, as to what you want to accomplish and how do you want to protect District 3 from the vagaries, of a VRBO or something. And because it doesn't happen where you live, it doesn't happen, where necessarily where you live, it's not going to happen. It all happens in District 3. And so it's not a question of representation so much as how do you want the town to be, the flavor of the town to be, because the flavor you're talking about is really District 3. That's where it happens. That's where it all happens. And that's where the money's being made too, because no developer is going to be coming to the sanctuary to buy 4 or 5 lots and then consolidate them into a bigger place. It's not going to happen there as well. And so if you want to protect what makes the District 3 and what makes it the town kind of unique, because it all emanates from District 3, is how do you do that? And it's not really what's fair to people of representation, but what's fair to the whole community if you want to try to preserve that. And it's just something you might want to consider, because all these little things about how many angels in the head of a pin you want to do, that's not solving the problem. The problem is still, how do you protect this area for the long term, and what do you do for it? I mean, the big controversy here in the past 5 years is Port Maroney, and that District 3 was pretty much adamant about how it was. District 2 is the ground zero for it, and they had a feeling about it as well, but that never got resolved. It's still not resolved. It's still up in the air because we just still don't know what's going to happen to it. But, you will have to decide what the community really wants to be and how it wants to be, and, it's a delicate thing. It requires some nuance to do this. Yeah. And so it's beyond just having my peeps on there.
Yeah. I appreciate your comments.
Go ahead, Dr.
I appreciate your comments. I just want to make one little correction, very small. In my district, there's only one neighborhood that does not have an HOA, and that's Old Golden Shores. And I'm trying to get some organization going on down there.
I thought it did. I didn't know that.
Yeah. After meeting all the people, I found that out. It's not functional, it's not working. So we need to reorganize it.
Mr. Zuckerman?
Yeah, I wanted to add, I appreciate your comments as well, and I do agree with, it is something we do need to look at long-term, and that's one of the reasons I wanted to push this year to begin the process of updating our comprehensive land use plan long-term, and I think that's something we ought to look at. I've heard from planning and zoning that by far the vast majority of the cases are in District 3. Most of the appeals are in District 3. I do think it's important, very important, to still have representation, from District 1 and 2, because there are other cases, but I think you make some really good points, and I think it's something we ought to look at long-term. So,
And
appreciate it.
I would respect those comments as well, but I would have to be insistent that there be representation, even in District 1, because there are cases that come up, and having been one of the only District 1 commissioners, there were areas that I knew about, but my fellow commissioners weren't familiar with. And it does happen, and we had an issue with the short-term rental that affected District 1. I mean, it happens. I do think it's important to still have representation.
I would like to say that I agree with you. I do think that right now, it's not about to be, but we did have 4 commissioners that were from District 3. And I agree with that. I also, because of that reason, I am a little concerned. I mean, Jason, Councilman Zuckerman, Councilman Danielson both live in District 3, and I would trust your nomination or your recommendation. However, to keep in the spirit of that particular district and that particular community, I would like each council person the opportunity, doesn't mean they have to pick someone from that district, but just to have the opportunity to nominate someone. The way it's always been, I believe, since the 80s. So I would like to go back to that, to where my concern is not with you two, but if this is, and I guess every council can make their own decisions, but I don't want to be in a position where only the at-large candidates or at-large councilmen are the ones determining who gets to be on the planning and zoning
Maybe
commission.
what
That
the-
concerns me.
Maybe what your solution is that you all make the rules for what those P and Z people do. And if the rules need to be tailor-made and tightened up to protect the communities, it's not gonna be done by P and Z members, it's gonna be done by this council to change those rules. You know, if you wanna get away from a high-density PUD, you change that rule. You're the ones who do that. You know, and if that's the way to protect the community, that's how you do it. Because, you know, a lot of people out there feel so helpless because there's no redress. I mean, having a planning and zoning that is made up of people who are following rules that you don't agree with, I mean, so that's where your revision of your comprehensive plan comes into play, because I don't know there was that much, I didn't participate in the last one, that was only in 2008.
Right, but
Yeah,
I think we might be getting a little bit off track, because what we're trying to do, at least right now, is decide on some rules for getting some.
Selection process.
The selection process there. So, you know, I think looking at planning and zoning long-term could be part of the, updated comprehensive land use plan. We could take a look at that, but right now, I think we gotta focus on getting some rules in place and getting some P and Z members to replace what we have, so.
Isn't it the position of the council to set the rules on this?
Yes.
Yeah.
So, you know, we appreciate all the input, but it's gonna come down to us making a decision on the rules and the selection. And, you know, and like I stated before, and I think everybody stated, it's qualifications, resumes, and experience. That's it. That's how it should be. And I don't think anybody, I don't think anybody's trying to weigh one district over another.
No,
And
I'm suggesting that.
each district should have representation. You know, and you say that.
I didn't mean to overcomplicate this, because I think what we have is a good framework here, and I'm in favor of, a large member and another member in this process that we have here. I would just say we could lose the reference to the whose position and how we decide who the second member is. Could be rotating, could be whatever. I think it's a good process to want to just move forward.
Yeah, but isn't that going back to the committee? Wasn't there a reason? I remember you sent an email out as to why.
I think we have to, you can always do a committee.
Okay.
Obviously, it can't be, there's 5 of us, so it can't be more than, it can't be 3 or more. And, so, could you have a committee, could you have 2 people, but does it become a committee? And, then the committee has certain rules, that have to be followed as well. So just something to consider,
Okay.
And it might be the right option, but, all right, let's get some other feedback, and then we'll come back around that. So, Mr. Rohrbach.
Leonard Rohrbach, 2525 Lakeshore Drive. I guess I speak from a little bit of voice of experience, because I was on the board for about 23 or 25 years. So many of them, I don't remember them. Don't get this too complicated. Number one, if any of y'all have ever interviewed someone for a job, an assistant architect, an assistant, somebody in business, a contractor, an actuator, a law assistant, a nurse. If you've ever interviewed somebody, they have credentials when they come to you, or they shouldn't be applying for the job. In this particular case, you will almost never have anybody that has experience in zoning, planning, any kind of city government. It's just highly unlikely. I never saw anybody in 23 years that had prior experience. I did not. I was an accountant. When I went and looked for a job, I said, here's my resume, here's my diploma, here's my GPA, but you're not going to get that. What you need to look at is look at some criteria, some questions to ask. Why are you interested in doing this? You gotta take 4 hours every year, you gotta take the sexual harassment test, the ethics test, you gotta do this, you gotta do that. You know, here's what you have to do to perform in this job. And oh, by the way, here's a 600-page book, read it, okay? Make sure they understand what they're getting into. It's a 7-year commitment. I can tell you, there's not that many people that complete the 7 years for one reason or another. We've had everything from death to transfers out of town, moving out of the city due to Katrina because they lost their house in John Champaign. There's just a lot of reasons why there's a tremendous turnover. Right now, if I did a quick calculation, I'm pretty good at that. Something like 43% of your board is going off this month or next month. 43%. You got to figure out how to replace these people. Each and every one of you is an HR person.
Yep.
You talk to that person. Each and every one of you have the right to talk to all 9 of these applicants. To my knowledge, only one of them has prior experience. And it happens to be right here in Mandeville. So, you know, but should he be a shoo-in? No. But look at the people that want to serve Mandeville. And whatever it is, $50 or $75 per meeting is not the reason they're applying. One of the reasons we had so many people, and I was astonished when I found out just very recently the 4 of the current members prior to your resignation were from the third day. That had never happened in 23 years while I was on it. It was never more than 3. The reason why we have so many people interested from District 3 is because we live there. We have probably every zoning classification in that book is in District 3. The other 2 districts have institutional, highway, R1 for most part, and a few R2 or more.
I don't want to cut you off, but I don't have my fancy little cards.
Okay. So anyway, it's just, you know, y'all just don't try to make a grade thing out of this. Just try to look at why people want to be on the board and judge them for that.
I think that's important, and I think the other thing we haven't talked about is diversity within the 7. And I mean, it's not just individual 3 that you're picking. You're seating a board, and so it's important to have somebody with construction. I think legal helps too. I think that helps. I mean, Ren's experience, has helped. I've learned a tremendous amount from. I think it's important to look at the 7 as a group. That it's not just individual ones, but I agree with you.
You know, you can't, it's not bad to try to get parity between the 3 districts, but it shouldn't be your deciding factor between 2 people.
I completely agree with you. I do just want to say, and I know Paul's got his hand up, wants to say something, but I think I have a solution. I want to propose a solution that might move this thing forward because we do need to get some people on planning and zoning. I think what would satisfy my kind of quirky wording concern was, since we do want to have 2 council members involved in the interview process, 1 at-large council member and the council member from the district where the departing commissioner resides. That would allow, that doesn't tie you in, it doesn't imply that there's any connection between a district and a commissioner or anything. It's just a way of selecting a second council member for the purpose of this process. So I just wanted to throw that out as a quick revision that we might be able to move this thing forward.
And Rick?
Yes, sir.
That is precisely what we talked about in the beginning.
Yeah.
We talked about the district whose position is vacated, and they are going, that person and the councilman at large get together, talk about this, and present it to the council. And rotating, I mean, you don't need to rotate. It depends. It depends, you know. You can and cannot. It doesn't. That's really kind of, if there's a a district, like you say, that's heavily weighted, I mean, the center of town is gonna be heavily weighted. The old town, it's always gonna be. But I agree with you, Z. I mean, that's what should be done,
I'm just,
you know?
what I'm talking about is strictly just the method of selecting that second councilman.
Yeah.
It really doesn't have anything to do with who's picked. I agree with everybody's comments, Mr. Arbog's, Mr. Begares, and
Well,
we-
Mr. Harrison. And we'll come back to that, Jason.
Yep.
Once again, I'll just keep my comments very brief, maybe from a unique perspective, because the previous council, like you all, wanted to create some objectivity and some professionalism when these appointed positions are done. And, you know, what you want to avoid is any public fighting or criticizing of candidates when they've kindly put their name into the hat for consideration. It may come funny from at least the present legal department for me to say, though, you need rules, but you also have to leave yourself some flexibility. Because Louisette has a lot of information on what qualifies you as a good candidate for any board.
Yeah.
But there are intangibles like keeping an open mind, removing any bias, be willing to listen, be kind. You can always learn the rules, and if you don't know the rules, you can always ask for an opinion from the legal department or people who know the rules. And you've got a planning director at present who almost memorized all the rules. No, I'm kidding. But I mean, she's very knowledgeable about the chloro. So you get the benefit, as Rebecca knows, that you're going to get guidance on the complexities of the chloro. I would say, though, for people in District 3, there is a lot of pressure. It's always busting at the seams of development. There's a need for knowledge of that community. So again, I agreed with almost all the comments. My one takeaway for you is don't create so many rules that then you can't work within your gut like when you interview in the private sector. Because you can't quantify who's better, an engineer or a doctor or a construction expert or a nurse, and it's not a resume thing.
Right.
And it's really not even a education thing. It's you willing to learn, you're willing to get the job done, dedicate your time, consider the community, whether you're in District 3, 1, 2, and whatever. If you're out of district, then you're obligated to at least learn the rules that apply in District 3. So those are my thoughts.
A lot of what we're talking about was circulated by Councilman Danielson in a publication that he sent to all of us, talking about those things,
Yeah.
the things other than the that are important.
And again, it's appointed, but it's you know, you can be removed. So, you know, I mean, that's another thing, like term limits to a degree for an appointed board. I mean, you could make an argument on both sides, but, you know, you'll find out really quick if people aren't doing the job.
Right,
And so you point them in, you learn, you get it done.
Absolutely. Yep, good feedback. Anything else from the floor? Comments, questions on this? Yes, ma'am. Mr. Greenwood's got my timer. Thank you, sir. I got fancy cards, I just don't have them. It's like says 3, 2, 1, stop. Thanks.
I would just like to add that you've got an immediate crisis. You've got 3 vacancies, you need to fill them. There's been so many good suggestions tonight, and long-range planning is part of it, and whether and how much to revamp Chloro depends on whether a real leader is elected Saturday or not. Maybe what you could do is utilize this hit list, and I like Mr. Zuckerman's change of where the departing commissioner resides, minor change in the language, because it accomplished several things. You've got to fill the immediate vacancies. You want to maintain some balance between the districts and look at the vacancies and where they're coming from. And by using the process that just happens to fit right now, this is a resolution. Make it for 3 months, and then you review it, and you get through the crisis. Y'all are blessed with 3 members of this council who have all sat on boards and commissions. They know what it's like. They will have valuable input. But also remember, there is the possibility, if you have a selection committee, for lack of a better term, to say what these 2 councilmen boil down to, and they make a recommendation, you've got 5 votes. If 3 of the councilmen don't like that recommendation, all of you need to do your homework and be prepared. But go with it and change it in 3 months if that's what you need.
Well, and it's a good point, and here's just a thought. With 3 vacancies, different districts and such, what if for these appointments, Jason and I are coordinating?
It's fine.
You know, and then we go back to the resolution and make the amendment, you know, on the language that Jason was saying under item 5, but get us through this process to get these positions filled, keep it simple, and then we can come back around.
It's fine with me.
Fine with me.
Follow me.
All right. Any thoughts on that, Mayor Louisette, anything? Yeah. So there, we had an exhibit, and I'll kind of go through this briefly just so y'all know. Item 1, announced at a public meeting, the city council is seeking resumes for an appointment on behalf of the entire council. Fair. Post the request for resumes on the city's website and on the front door of City Hall within 48 hours of the notice of vacancy to the council office. 3, publish the request for resumes in the city's official journal. 4, allow for 14 business days from the public meeting when the appointment was announced to receive all resumes from the interested parties. 5, and Jason, you can come back and make the amendment on your language, but currently says following the receipt of resumes, 1 at-large council member and the council member from the district whose position is vacant will review the applicant's resume. The 2 council members will conduct interviews via phone or in person and jointly make a recommendation for the vacant position to the entire council. During this time, other members of the council do have the right to conduct their own interviews as long as a quorum is not present. And item 6, at the next regular council meeting, a motion and second shall be made for the appointment of the candidate who received the recommendation. A vote will then be taken by the council to fill the appointment. So that's the items that we're discussing, and I think I would make a couple of amendments. Make a motion on amendment number 1 would be for calendar year 2020, that the 2 at-large council members will coordinate the process to fill any vacancies needed for planning and zoning and other commissions, okay? And then, Jason, reread your language, and this would be for 2021.
Amendment
or
number
unless
2 would be
amended
to
otherwise.
change line item number, or step number 5 to following the receipt of resumes, 1 at-large council member and the council member from the district where the departing commissioner resides will review the applicant's resume.
Okay. Any questions on those amendments? Okay, we'll kind of vote on the amendments as they've kind of been presented, and then we can go from there. So all in favor of the 2 recommended amendments, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay, any opposed to that? Okay, so now let's go back to the resolution as it's been amended. Any other questions on this process? Okay, anything from the floor? Any other questions or comments in regards to this? I would say, again, it takes time, obviously. You know, we can't discuss all these things collectively unless we're in a public meeting. So, yes, ma'am, Ms. Shear.
You actually have a conflicting amendment, because you put in amendment number 2 for the calendar year beginning 2021.
Uh-huh. Yeah,
Oh.
yeah.
Do
So
I need to reread
that would
that?
be Jason's amendment would be starting January 1, 2021.
So do you want me to reread it, or can you? I'll have to revote.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'll make amendment number 2.
Yeah.
Beginning year 2021, line item number, or step number 5 would read, following the receipt of resumes, 1 at-large council member and the council member from the district where the departing commissioner resides will review the applicant's resume.
Okay. All right. Any questions on that?
So we'll be able to give you all input, right?
Absolutely.
Okay, and we can interview the
Yes.
applicants and,
Yep.
That's
Yeah.
item 6.
Okay.
So that's Jason's motion, a second on
Second.
that amendment. Okay, any other questions on that? Everybody good? Okay, all in favor of approval of the amendment, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay, all right, so we'll go back to the full resolution as it's been amended. Anything else? All good for the moment? Thank you all for your time. We spent a lot of time on it 3 weeks ago. We spent a lot of time on it tonight. It's important for the people that have applied. Thank you very much. Jason, you and I will start working on it around the clock.
Great.
Yes. Okay, so all in favor of approving resolution number 20-17 as it has been amended, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, that is approved, and we can move forward with a process. Thank you. Okay, next item. Adoption of Resolution Number 20-18, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Mandeville accepting the bids for lift stations number 12 and number 24, rehab A&E project number 1701A07, and authorizing the mayor to execute a contract with the apparent low bidder Subterranean Construction LLC and providing for other matters in connection therewith. Motion.
Move.
And a
Second.
by Ms. Bush. Dr. Kreller.
This resolution is related to two lift stations, number 12 and 24. We had four bids sent in, and the low bid was $588,230, and that bid was from Subterranean Construction. The high bid was a little over $1 million, but this was the low bid. The engineers have reviewed the bid and approved it. Just give you a little bit of history on these lift stations. Number 12 was built in 1988. Number 24 was built in 1981. Number 12 is by the Shell station that's just been renovated, and the 24 is by the Starbucks. Now, in Starbucks, they had to move it across the driveway, and so it was a little bit more complicated. But everything went well. The engineers approved all of this, and now we're gonna go forward.
Questions, comments from council on this item?
My only question, I think you just answered it, that the city engineer has approved, and I guess I would ask Mr. DeGeneres that it's important to save money, and I like low bids too, but are we satisfied with the contractor? Is my only question.
Yes, ma'am. This originally was budgeted for $800,000, so it did come in under budget, which is always good. So we do recommend you go forward with this contract. We've worked with the city before, and I would recommend
Yeah, good feedback. Okay, anything else? Comments, questions from the floor? Okay, all in favor of approval of resolution number 20-18, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that is approved. Next item, introduction of ordinance number 20-15, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Mandeville approving a conditional use permit for the use designated under Cloro Section 6.4.42.3, lodging transient, short-term rental, whole house rental located on 737 Coffee Street, zoned OR Office Residential District, being Lot 4A, Square 43B, approving site plan, floor plan, and providing for other matters in connection therewith. Motion.
Move.
Second?
Second.
Strictly just an introduction. We had three of these earlier, so this would be the fourth applicant to this process, and we'll bring it back up at our next meeting for further discussion and a vote.
Yes.
Okay. Oh, I'm sorry, yes. Yes, so we're deferring that to P and Z for their review and recommendations coming back.
Yes.
So we'll get it when they're done with it. Okay? Public comment. Anybody from the floor like to make a comment on anything that's not on the agenda or has already been discussed? Yes, sir. 3 minutes. My muscle in the back is going to count us down.
Appreciate it.
You bet.
My name is Richard Ducote. My office address is 318 East Boston Street in Covington. I'm a candidate for Division J of the 22nd Judicial District Court. I do not take 1 red cent of campaign contributions from anybody, no money from family, no money from lawyers, no money from businesses, no money from anybody. I'm the only person running for judge who doesn't take any money from anybody. This is an open seat. I've been practicing law for 42 years. I was a special assistant district attorney in 19 parishes. I've tried cases in 50 Louisiana courts. I've tried cases in 46 states. I have an LLM degree, a Master of Laws degree, which few attorneys have. In 1992, I won a case in the United States Supreme Court on behalf of 2 sexually abused kids. My passion has been the protection of abused women and kids. I've written over 25 laws to that effect that have been enacted in Louisiana and around the country. I've gotten a lot of honors and awards for that. You may have gotten these cards in the mail, and if it's okay if I could leave a couple on the table if anybody else wants to pick one up. I think this race is about qualifications. I have certainly the qualifications to be, I believe, a good servant of the law and a servant of the people. The election's November 3rd. Early voting's October 20th through the 27th. And I would appreciate your consideration. Thank you very
Thank
much.
you, sir.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
it. Good luck.
Thank you.
Any other public comment? Yes, sir. Name and address.
Yes. James Knapp, 1280 LeBar Street, Mandeville, Louisiana. Technically outside city limits, but my business resides on 310 Dellwood Drive, and here we are. So I'm here this evening to ask a few questions and to make a point. The first question is, and please indulge me, by show of hands here, who is aware of the 5G tower that went up behind the Mandeville Police Station earlier this summer?
Yeah, seen it.
Okay. Who here has a general understanding of how 5G technology operates? I do. Okay. Okay. So the business I own is a health food store. I've been in the industry for many years, and so I have an understanding of biology, human anatomy, and as well as history, and I have concerns about this technology. So I've come here to make that point. We absolutely need to increase our awareness for it, and I'd like to invite everyone to do so, to do some research. If you have any specific questions relating to the technology, please email 5ginmandeville@gmail.com, and I'd be happy to forward you a lot of information. That's all I want to say this evening, because it seems to have been a long evening thus far, and make that point, and thank you for the time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Knapp. Absolutely. All right, anything else, public comment-wise? All right, projects in progress. Mr. DeGeneres. No.
Roadway maintenance, we have task order 3 and 4 currently going on. Basically, the only work we're doing right now is we're doing some drainage and sidewalk work on Heavens Drive. We're going to basically do a sidewalk from Highway 22 to around Libra, so that's in progress right now. Principal's trying to finish up some designs to do some drainage work in the shadows, and then we're also getting ready to do the crossings on Girard and Lafitte Street, similar to the intersections we have. We have a few intersections there we're getting ready to start as well. The water and sewer maintenance task order 4, we're doing some point repairs. Basically, we have some sewer and water taps for new construction, and then they also have a crew working on all these meters that we have left from the AMI project that were more difficult for that contractor. So we have the guys specializing at doing that, so they're slowly changing those meters out, trying to whittle that number down. Was at 80, we're down to 62, we're slowly trying to whittle that number down. Causeway and Central Bypass Project, if y'all see, the road's back open now, it's been repaved and all that. There's going to be a final change order come to y'all on that project, so it's essentially done, but all the breaks that we had on that force main, there was 3 breaks on that force main during that process, so all that's coming in on that final change order will still be under bid from the original budget for that, so it's going to be a little bit increase in the cost, but it's still under budget from what we had budgeted. Lift station 1224 y'all approved tonight. The Bayou Castine seawall repair, that's redoing the seawall along Bayou Castine by the boat launch. That's part of the boat launch, and it takes it out all the way out to the point. We signed contracts. Contractor needs an assembly period for about 45 days to try to get the materials in, so he's working on that. Materials are more difficult to come by with COVID and all that from suppliers and all that, so it's going to take him a little bit longer. Once he has the materials on site, we'll issue a notice receipt for him to go and start that. So he's thinking probably mid to late September is when he's hoping to start that. The other one was the fire department signal on Highway 22. Contractor signed with that, so they're going ahead and order the materials to get that project scheduled to start there. That's to do a flashing light by the fire department. The city's agreed to pay part of that. The fire department is doing else, but we're dealing with the engineering and all that, so we could get that process in since it's going on a state highway. Other than that, the only thing we have coming up in the future is lift station 16 and 26. It's currently out to bid. I think it bids around the 9th of September, so we'll be bringing those to y'all as well shortly.
Gotcha.
So anything that y'all have to the...
I have one thing. St. Anne, Botanica, and that shopping center, the strip shopping center. the sidewalk ends right there, and there's a piece of property, and then the shopping center.
Yes.
Now, I know, I sure would like to have that sidewalk completed, because, so Botanica people and residents can easily, don't have to walk in the street to get to that, that's all.
I think that we could add that on a future task order
Okay.
on roadway maintenance. That's not an issue. That
Thank you.
is a problem. That seems to be the dead end where they go and walk their dogs and they throw all of their dog bags right at the end of there. So a sidewalk carrying through might clean up some of that. So I'm in favor
I
of
ran
that.
into those dog bags when I put some signs. Okay.
So if there's anything else,
Any other questions for Mr. DeGeneres?
No, sir.
Okay.
I did want to
Yes, sir.
mention, y'all had asked for some plans for the berm.
Yep.
It's currently on the website. If you look under
I've got
city
the-
departments, under
I've got-
public works.
I've got the berm, I was looking for the plans for the turn lane, the proposed turn lane at the end of Monroe Street.
It is actually on there now
Is
as
it?
well. So,
Okay.
yeah, we put that on this week as well. So you look at that same spot, it's right below that. So that intersection at Monroe and East Approach is also on the website. Under the public work, go to the city departments, under public works, and it's at the bottom. Just click on it and the plans will come up.
Perfect, thank you,
What
David.
what about the road work at Four Corners?
That's not, we're finalizing plans to get to submit to DOTD. They're not quite, they had some changes made, they're not complete yet, but certainly once I get them complete, the finals that we submit to DOTD, I'll go ahead and put those on the website as well.
Thank you. Mayor Villery, thank you. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Vote Saturday. Ms. Sika, good luck. Any of our other candidates voting, running, doing anything at this time, good luck. And this meeting is adjourned. Have a great evening.
Two comments,
Oh,
real
yeah.
quick. One, I want to thank, there was some great public input tonight on the processes.
Absolutely.
And everything, really appreciate the public input, and I wanted to thank our council clerk. This is the first time in my life I've ever been called on first for anything, roll call. I don't know why or how that happened, but I do appreciate it.
Don't change your seating. No. Yes. All right. Meeting adjourned. Thank you all very much.